Hi, everybody. This video is to talk about the first freedom of the five freedoms, and that is the freedom of religion. Within this segment, you should hopefully by the end be able to give an example of a protection that you have from the Establishment Clause in the First Amendment. Um, Also, I'm hoping that you'll be able to explain what the wall of separation of church and state is, as an important concept that relates to the Establishment Clause. And lastly, you should be able to give an example of how you, as a citizen of the United States, are affected by the Free Exercise Clause. Well, let's look at the freedom of religion. In the First Amendment, it states, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. ... Well, it doesn't actually have the dots, but as you can see, there are two separate parts of the freedom of religion. First is referred to as the Establishment Clause, meaning that Congress can't pass a law that establishes any religion as the religion of the United States. Secondly, Congress is prohibited from interfering in your free exercise of your religion, that you're allowed to practice your religion how you want. Let's look at these in a little bit more detail, shall we? The Establishment Clause, the first part, says that essentially the government cannot pass laws, cannot enforce laws that promote, encourage, require the worship of any specific religious faith. Congress can't come out and say, by the way, Keelanism is the official religion of the United States. If you're not practicing Keelanism, you're going to jail. That would be unconstitutional. It's against the Establishment Clause. So the idea is that the government can't get in the deal of deciding what your religion should be. Now, this is important, but because before our Constitution, most governments in the world had some sort of official or established religion. And we see historically, when you have an established religion, there's often a great deal of persecution and oppression of those who do not follow that religious doctrine the way that the majority sees fit. This is a very dangerous thing. Religion and government, we want to keep separate. Therefore, our founders didn't want to have the same situation they saw in England, in France, and other countries where one official religion led people to being jailed, killed, hurt or devastated, or forcibly converted. One of the founding ideas within the Establishment Clause is that there should be a wall of separation between church and state. Now, those aren't my words, those are Jefferson's. We want to try to secure that the government and religion are separate entities. That our government should try to remain as secular as possible. Now, does that mean that we can't have religious people in our government? Absolutely not. Separation of church and state is not separation from church and state. We'll talk about that more in our limitations portion of this video. But the idea is that we don't want our government and our religion to be the same thing. We don't want our government to tell us what our religion is. We don't want our laws to be the laws of any set religion. Government, as much as possible, our laws, as much as possible, should be secular, not controlled by any sort of religion. The idea is that any religion has no business stating or controlling what kind of government we should have. Now it's time for another one of those amazing critical analysis questions. This I want you to think of how your life might be different if the government only allowed one religion, even if your religion was the one that was allowed, or even if it was the banning of all religions. If there is only one type of religious belief allowed in our society, how would your life be different? Think on that, pause the movie, and when you're ready to begin, unpause. All right. Well, I'm sure that you gave a lot of thought to that. We'll discuss it later in class. In the meantime, we're going to talk about the second clause of the First Amendment. That's the free exercise clause. What this essentially says is that you have the right to carry out your religious beliefs however you want. This protects all religious practices, everything. It, how you pray, how you celebrate your holiday, how you dress in commemoration of your religion, what house of worship you choose to go to, what type of sacrifice or sacraments you make. All these are protected by the free exercise clause. You can exercise your religious belief however you want. This also makes sure that it protects those practices not held by those who are in the majority. Once again, what's popular isn't always right. You have the right to do something that is seen by others to be sacrilegious or unholy. If that's within your religious practice and beliefs, you have the right to do it. No one can tell you what your appropriate religious beliefs are and force you not to adopt them or to adopt theirs. This also protects your right to have no religion. You have the right to pursue any religious pathway you want, including saying, religion's not for me. That's part of your free exercise. This works to keep the government out of your religion. It's not Congress's business to tell me where or how or who to pray to. Okie doke, everyone. It's time for another critical analysis question. This one focusing on the free exercise of religion. So I want you to think of one religious belief or practice that you have or that you know of that may be outlawed in another country without the First Amendment. So first, think if you can think of one of your own beliefs that might be outlawed in a country without the First Amendment, or if you can't think of one of your own, think of another religious practice that could be banned in another country. There are many countries that don't have freedom of religion protections. Once you think of that, I then want you to expand on it. Why is it important that we protect that practice here in the United States? Why is it important that this religious exercise be protected by the First Amendment? Start working on that. Pause the movie, and then we're going to talk about why the freedom of religion is important. So, why is the freedom of religion important, you might be asking yourself? Well, once again, this goes along with that whole idea and theme within the First Amendment that it protects beliefs and ideas that might not be popular. Our founders realized in a pluralistic society, meaning a society of many different people, having many different parts and beliefs and ethnicities, that we needed to protect the minority from what could possibly be the dictatorship of the majority. Remember, what you think as right, what you think as holy, there are others in the world who see it as immoral, as wrong, as repugnant, as disgusting, as unholy. You have a right to be protected from each other's religious morality. Just because you don't agree with my religious beliefs doesn't mean you have the right to stop me from practicing my religious beliefs, and vice versa. Remember, many of our founders fled to America because they were persecuted from their religion in Europe. Then we see that tradition continues, that American history is wrought with people who immigrated, who came to our country with the hope of fleeing religious persecution, with the hope of being able to freely practice their religion. If we look at our history, if we look at current events, we see that when government and religion are one, persecution and injustices almost always occur. Theocracies and democracies cannot exist together. And when religious law is the law of society, is the law of government, those who don't follow that religion are often on the out and subject to cruelties. We wanted to make sure in our society that we couldn't allow these things to occur, to try to stop this cycle. One just looks at history and they can see it over and over again. In ancient Rome, Christians were the minority, weren't practicing the polytheistic religion of the mainstay of the Roman Empire. That's seen the emperor as almost a divine king. Um, for standing against that, we saw that they were persecuted, hunted, killed for hundreds of years. Most notably by the Roman Emperor Nero, who burned Christians to light his gardens, who used them for shows in the Colosseum, feeding them to lions. This is just one example of religious persecution. Um, During medieval times, when the church was all powerful in Europe, they carried out the Spanish and Roman Inquisitions, where Jews, Muslims, and non-believers were tortured, mutilated, and killed in attempts to force them to convert and renounce their faiths. Um, Fascism is a form of government where the government is religion, where someone like Hitler or others like him were worshipped to a godlike status. And minority religious groups are persecuted. Uh, we all know the history of the Holocaust, where the government used its power to persecute, systematically murder, and destroy the rights of millions and millions of Jews, gypsies, and other people who they felt were outside the bounds of the majority held beliefs. Even still today, many of you have heard the story of Malaya, who was a young girl in Pakistan who's fighting for a right to be able to get an education, who was subject to an attempted assassination attempt in her attempts to try to fight to secure her right to an education, despite what some people say in their religious belief that she doesn't have that right. She continues to fight for that right in the face of those who mean to kill her, hurt her family, as a way of trying to enforce their religious beliefs. Now, no freedom is absolute. There are limitations on the freedom of religion. You can't break the law and say that it's in the name of your religion. I can't go and sacrifice somebody and say that, oh, that's in the name of my religion. I can't go and start robbing people or harm people and say it's in the name of my religion. Furthermore, separation of church and state does not mean separation from church and state. We need only to look at many different aspects of our society and see that there are aspects of religion that are part of our government, part of our limitation of our society. Whether it's the saying in God, one nation under God, and a pledge of allegiance, or in God we trust on our currency. Um, People don't leave their religion just simply because they become part of our government. Many people's public policy is guided by their religious beliefs. So we can't just say that because church and state are separated, it doesn't mean that there is a full separation from both of those things. In our next video, we'll be talking about freedom of speech. You can stop this video now.